Pardesi Beats.
What's up, everybody? You're tuned into Pardesi Beats Unplugged. Welcome into today's episode. With the hockey season around the corner, preseason has started. We thought it would be very fitting that we talk a little bit of hockey in today's episode, but we will not be talking about the upcoming season. We'll be talking about our first recollections of hockey, why all of us in this chat right now love hockey so much and love sports so much. Kind of fitting that we're doing this after our Bugs and Drugs episode because it really ties in with our identity. But we'll be talking about sports in this episode. I am M. Tadwal. With me today, we have Pathwan Singh and the greatest two-way center in Division 12 Beer League hockey, Kushwant Singh.
So good, I had to retire. And I had to move to wing so I could give other people opportunities because I was just too damn good.
Just too dominant. That's
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Kush and I play on the same hockey team, so I had to throw a little bit of a jab in there in the summer. So
a little bit of a knuckle puck.
A little bit of a knuckle puck for sure.
Which
we
is
won't
what
talk about
Malik's shots are from the
yeah, that's exactly
You knew I was gonna say.
I'm never on the ice. Anyways, sports,
whenever he does a point shot, you got to watch your head because it never
watch your face.
It never goes
top
never
corner.
goes below the
Always
crossbar. Yeah, top corner of the glass pane.
Anyways, hockey. It's interesting because when we brought up this topic, all of us are like, yeah, we all love sports. We've talked about that at nauseum, but hockey, especially being in Edmonton, being Battle of Alberta, all of these things, it was really a big part of our identity. And that got me thinking, like, when was I drawn to hockey? What is my first recollection of hockey? Why do I love this sport that we call the good old hockey game so much?
Yeah.
So I guess my first question for both of you, either or can start. What is your first memory of hockey? Just in general, like first recollection as a kid.
Ours might be intertwined because for those that don't know, we're kind of siblings. So we might have similar, but we have different time spans. Like I'm half a generation older, I would say. But
he's saying first, not necessarily first game or something we went to.
Well, my first recollection, I'm just gonna go now because I just started.
Yeah.
My first recollection is actually the late 80s, early 90s, more so from my dad. Like he used to keep talking about Oilers, Gretzky, Yari Curry, all these old school players that he actually met them at his job. So he used to run into a lot of these players at his job and he would bring home autographs for us and things like that. I still have them somewhere. And so he would always talk about these Oilers to me. We when he'd drive around, he'd be tuned into 630 Chad listening to, like the afternoon news, and then the Oilers sports show would come on. I'd be listening to that as well. And so that's my first recollection of what the Oilers were. Therefore, my sort of intro into hockey as a sport was intertwined with just what the Oilers are, who the Oilers are. And in those days, we were just ending our sort of, I guess you can say, epic run from the, technically early 80s to the early 90s of Stanley Cup, winning teams like Dynasty Oilers era. So from there, then the 90s, then I started growing up higher 2-3 grades of elementary and junior high. And then I started really liking the Oilers as well. And following even more so just myself, unattached from any influence. And that was sort of the Kelly Buchberger, Doug Waite, Ryan Smith, rookie days era, early days. So at the risk of rambling, I'll stop there. But yeah,
I'm curious. So that kind of makes sense with your allegiance with the Montreal Canadiens as well, because early 90s they're the last Canadian team to win a Stanley Cup. So that's interesting. That's the
Habs allegiance. Just a side note, started way later. And it started in the Saku Koivu days.
Oh yeah.
And it started when, they weren't really the best team. And I just said, like, I really like their history. I used to read a lot of hockey books. Like I used to go to Ellerslie Junior High, and in the library, there was these stairs that you could kind of go under, and there was these like little beanbag chair, and then you can go up at the tier up above the stairs into this higher level in the library with beanbag chairs everywhere. So I used to just go there and just sit there and read all these, like pick up these books, read them at lunchtime and put them back. So I learned a lot about the Habs, and I just started following them and their history.
I love because I've never heard that story. I've known you for so long, Pat, but I've never heard that story specifically. And what I love about that is my story is very similar. You've brought up books, you've brought up the 80s Oilers. You brought up even the parent connection. So with my dad's job, he also ran into Oilers a lot, and we would get random signatures. I still have a Peter Klima signed paper in my and it's pretty interesting that is kind of the tie-in, especially for me. My first recollection actually, it was in a home video. So this was at the end of, I think it was my Lordy video, and it was in the VHS. So we would forward it. And for some reason, there was an Edmonton Oilers versus LA Kings hockey game recorded in it. And I remember being a kid and watching it. Yeah, it was the Gretzky, and it was the LA Kings with the yellow jerseys. Definitely 80s era. So that was my first recollection. I'm like, oh, what is this in my home video? Growing up, I played hockey from a young age. I started when I was 7 years old. So it was definitely a big part of my identity as I grew up. But also, you brought up books, and that kind of triggered me a little bit, because I remember in elementary school, there was a book called Shabash by Anne Walsh. And it was a story about a Indo-Canadian kid who had a Judah that was trying to fit into the culture and fit into playing hockey, and he would get bullied because of his hair. And he finally got accepted by his friends. And for me, I was like, that's sick. Like, I can identify with that.
I'm gonna look that one up right now.
Yeah, it's a solid. It's a kid's book for sure. But like, it was one of my favorite books growing up. But for me, hockey has always been like a huge part of my identity, what I identify with. But my first recollection is that random Edmonton Oilers versus LA Kings game in the back of one of my home videos. I had no idea who Gretzky and any of these players were, but that was kind of my first recollection as a kid. Kush, what came to your mind when you thought of the good old hockey game?
Actually, so the first games I remember watching were on TV. It wasn't of the Oilers, actually of the Senators. And it must have been a hockey night in Canada game. And like, it would have had to been probably. And I don't really, growing up in school and everything, like hockey's talked about and stuff, or you play hockey or whatever, right? But like, so like, this is pretty young now, right? Like, I'm just getting my feet wet into it, or what it is. And so like, I just remember like, that's the first really memories I have of hockey, is like watching the Senators play, like I think in hockey night in Canada. Then, as time kind of went on, a lot of, kids played growing up, especially in our area. And also Mr. Pathwansing there, what he would used to do with me is give me his baseball glove. And we had a blocker, I think, just a random single blocker. And then I would use like those mini shovels.
No, we had just the glove, not the blocker.
Yeah. So anyways, I would have the baseball glove, like this green one. I still remember it very vividly. It was like a Ninja Turtles. Yeah. And then we had those little mini shovels for like kids to snow or shovel snow. And that was my stick. And so he used to take shots on me, and I was the goalie with a tennis ball. So we used to do that. That's how I kind of started playing as well. But then I kind of fell also into that early 90s Oilers little crew there that Pathwant was mentioning. I never had exposure to Gretzky stuff or like the Dynasty. I didn't really have exposure to that. I only had early 90s Dougie Wade, Bookberger, Billy Garrett, and Jason Arnott, those guys, right? Smitty. Yeah. So
I was gonna say no love for Jason Arnott. Like I feel like he's one of the most underrated Oilers.
I was said his name.
My very first jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My very, very first Oilers jersey was, I believe, in 96 that I went and got it. And my three options were Doug Weight, Jason Arnott, and Ryan Smith. And I didn't know much about it at the time. This was the Jersey store in Heritage Mall.
That
There's a
is like the
throwback
hardest
place.
decision for a kid to make. Like,
And I remember the
jersey do I
guy there
want?
saying, you can't go wrong with, he's like, Jason Arnott's still young. You don't go with Jason Arnott. I would go with Ryan Smith. He's Canadian. And I was like, screw that. I'm going to go with Doug Waite because I like Doug Waite and I liked how he
Can't go
played
wrong.
and
Yeah.
his persona. So
Yeah,
I'm glad I didn't
obviously
do with
the
Arnott
best one
though.
there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like Ninema, Hammerlake, all those defensemen,
Oh, man.
Marinov, those guys. Yeah, so like that's like, you know, I fell in love with that Oilers team, and kind of then, you know, did a lot of street hockey, like, you know, every day would play with like neighbors and stuff, and then
Yeah.
even like there was like some of those Opana kids who went to
We used to play with DJ
elementary
Scammy
school. We
D.
used to play as well.
Shout out to
Yeah.
DJ Scammy D.
Yeah, he used to come out as well.
He used to come play with us too.
He was in
Yeah.
our hood. So
By the
anyways,
way,
yeah, I play with
Just
different groups
randomly,
of people.
Malik, I just ordered Shabash on Amazon.
You can't even see it on your screen, but
I know. Did
Great,
it though.
great book.
Yeah, that's like my early stuff, right? And then just
So-
it was fun. That's essentially as a kid.
What I'm
it's
curious
fun.
about then, yeah, like what drew you into that? Like, I know you mentioned, I guess, playing with the kids and
I think kind of it was my
also getting
influence
bullied
a
by
little bit,
Pat.
I
Yeah,
guess.
getting bullied by Pat to be the goalie.
Well,
yeah.
bullied, but you know the little brother.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
So here's the perspective. Like I really wanted to play, and I remember my parents, our parents, putting me into skating pella, and you know my sister and Cushy here. They were younger. They tried with my sister. It didn't really take. But then later, as I grew my interest, I wanted to learn how to skate. Then I remember my papa, my taya, right? He took me to Totem Outfitters and bought me used skates. This wasn't my first pair of skates. My mom did go take us to Canadian Tire once when that original failure happened because we weren't into hockey. They were just teaching us how to skate, right? No, but now that I loved hockey, I wanted to learn. And then, you know, I think the conversation at home was like, oh, fir Kushi no vi la do to see, right? And then Kushi got some skates too. And then Gagan got some too, right? My sister. So then we all went out and we would play at the Sakaw School ice rink. And I learned to skate by myself there. Kush came along at the same time. So even though I'm 7 years older than him, we learned to skate around the same time. He's way better than I am now. I mean, I can't stop, so I can't go backwards. But
Yeah, Cushy stopping is also questionable, but
I mean,
yeah.
he stops effectively from what I know. So
effectively, that's for sure.
So, and then from there we just started playing. And before the skates came, we would like he said, we would play in the garage. And our garage
I feel like,
wall.
Yeah, that's like a really common. I mean, I want to say for especially like Indo-Canadian, like we talked about, like with Bugs and Drugs, like it wasn't necessarily ice hockey. I know for me, ice hockey was before street hockey, but for the majority, it's we play street hockey first, and then if the family can afford it or if the parents are open to it, then ice hockey happened.
Like all of our skates were secondhand, right? Like
for sure.
We bought them from Totem. Like if you're local Edmontonian and you've played some hockey growing up, you may have bought some stuff secondhand.
I played hockey until at the end of high school, so 18. Every single year I had a used pair of skates. And the first time I bought a new pair of skates was when I started playing hockey again after university.
Yeah, as an adult.
Yeah, as an adult.
With maybe you have a job or something. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So I feel like that's super common and that's totally okay.
Yeah. And like in chronologically, like we learned how to skate after we were already playing like garage hockey or whatever you want to call it.
So I want to jump in on kind of what drew me in. So we've talked about like aesthetics of sports. And for me, it's always been like, what is it? I love the all-star game. I love the skills competition. I love the showy part of it. Yeah, so growing up, and as a kid, like 8-9 years old, I was like, okay, cool, hockey's great, but like, okay, cool, the Atlanta Thrashers, the Minnesota Wild, like these are cool teams, right? I was very drawn to the aesthetics of hockey. So that's kind of what drew me in. And I think I'm trying to think of like other sports. I was a big basketball guy growing up too. So again, I feel like for me, what drew me into sports more so than playing and kind of the camaraderie of family and friends and playing with people that I know, it was the aesthetic of it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Really. I like the jerseys. I like the logos. I like to draw and stuff like that. So for me, it's interesting because it's like, it wasn't really the camaraderie or the sport. It was the aesthetic of the sport.
Yeah, that's interesting you said that. I didn't really think about it, but
I
like
bought
I
a
used to love
Nashville
drawing
Predators
the
jersey, their first jersey, just for those reasons.
yeah, you made me buy one too.
Yeah, no,
But like yeah, I used to draw the logos a lot. I didn't really think about it till you just said that actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm like remembering, like I still do it to this day. If I'm bored,
and the
I'll start
coolest thing
doodling.
back then, we used to be the
Yeah, I'll do
goalie
Oilers to this day.
equipment. Do you guys remember that? The goalies used to have the cool, like Cujo's mask,
Oh yeah,
and then
Oh, yeah.
Marty Broder's pad.
but that's the beauty of, like, that's why I love the aesthetics of hockey, because like
Yeah.
basketball you have really neat jerseys, and
and
football
shoes.
not so much, but yeah, the shoes. But for hockey, like the goalies have such originality, not only in their helmet, but like their pad designs too, right?
Yeah.
Like they do some pretty neat stuff, and it's like I keep thinking of Peter Buda and Ned Flanders on his helmet, or like Johan Hedberg with his moose on his helmet. Like it just, these things are iconic. So
Well, especially for me, because I played almost solely goalie in street hockey
in those days,
and,
yeah.
and though when I grew up, right? Like, before I started skating on ice, right?
So here's the funny thing: he played goalie all the time, but I went out and found, and I'll tell you where, because I guess this many years later I can reveal the secret. But I found these Marty Broder replica street hockey pads.
I still remember them being in your garage when I first met you.
Yeah, and everybody asked where I got those. Everybody's going like, "Where'd you get them?" And then I got a Devils jersey without the logo, but the print. And I would wear that as a thing. And when I felt like playing goalie, I would pull those out, and everybody would be like, "Oh snap, where'd you get those?" But I didn't always play goalie. Like I would play because I had those, and I was like, "Yo, sweet." But Cushy more so played goalie because I don't know, because I was older, right? And I wanted to shoot up, but you go in net, and he started playing. And then he was eyeing those pads down big time. And then I remember I bought him some other, like a kid set. Plus I had this sick glove. I forgot what the glove was. I just got a good deal on it. So I had this extra glove, and he'd want to use it too. So I let him use it. But first he was only allowed to use my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles baseball glove from when I was a kid.
This is a many-year progression, by the way. It's not like it's like
all over the place. But
yeah,
those pads, okay? Because Marty Broder's pads, everybody was like, "Yo, where'd you get those?" Those are when I was a little bit more junior high and approaching high school, because I remember going to the Gurdwara, right? Gurdwara.
That's when we used to play at the Gurdwara a lot.
Yeah. And all the Punjabi kids
GHL.
were like, "Where'd you get those?" Yeah, it was sick.
Yeah.
It's still
it was Canadian Tire. Now you know.
Yeah. No, they used to be there a lot after, like when we grew up, you're like, "Oh, cool." Right. But like in that age, like Berder's my favorite goalie of all time, right? And I see these pads, I'm like, holy shit, I want these so bad, because the Devils fan came in me afterwards, right? Like I was watching those cup runs, those early 2000 cup runs and stuff, and I fell in love with that team. So that's why Devils are always my second team, like to this day. And then so like Berder, like a Canadian hockey hero, obviously, arguably the best goalie of all time. And so then playing with his pads, like that design, they were legit like matched that time.
Had the
design,
Devil's
right?
tail on them. Yeah.
Yeah, like so those were sick. Like I used those until I grew out of them, and I was still using them. And people are like, "Hey man, you're playing." Like I would just play with them at like tournaments or something, like, just for fun.
2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and people would be like, "Hey, I think you might need bigger pads." I'll be, "I'm okay, I'll be fine," because I still rocked them even when they were too small for me, right?
Do you remember when we used to play in the living
out.
room, and we used to take the sofa cushions and tie them around your legs as pads?
Yeah.
Remember that?
I'm still hearing a lot of bullying.
I took a snapshot
so
and it hit the Sony TV, and the Sony TV was never the same since.
Game over.
Remember that? I hit it right on the Sony logo because
it wasn't game over. It's not game over when you don't say what happened, right?
Yeah. Well, now
I love,
it's like those moments are when you're on the same team. Okay.
What I love about all this, like and Kushi, you kind of alluded to it as well, like with the GHL, there was like a whole Gurdwara hockey league where I would like, so again, me being the ice
GHL is the most legendary thing of all time.
But the beauty of it is like I would always go to the Gurdwara, I would always see you guys, but I would never play with you guys for some reason. Like I'd never ever played with you guys. I was never a street hockey kid.
Scared. Saw the pads and
I was intimidated by you, Kush. But also that reminds me of when
we were like legendary players.
When we played tinfoil, like at the Gurdwara,
hand hockey at the Gurdwara. Yeah.
Like,
remember that always be playing where everyone's putting their coats away, and you're just in everyone's way, and it's so awesome. And then you be told off, and you just go downstairs to.
I just remember, I know exactly which uncle it is too. You guys all know him. I won't say his name, but he used to be like, "Do you think this is a playground?" And I just remember it being so profound that we were like, oh, like, you know,
those are the moments you're like, okay,
those were the words. Like, but, is this a playground to you? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, we use that to this day.
What I love about hockey though, like we've talked about like bugs and drugs, like an identity and stuff like that. It drew us all together with like a common thing. And I have a really funny story. It would be even funnier if Simran was here because he's much better at telling stories than I am. This was probably, I'd have to say like 7 or 8 years ago. Actually probably more, but either way. So shout out to the Surma boys. We've been friends since high school. So we hang out a lot. So we decided this was like probably university, like after university, like we were grown ass men. And we're like, hey, let's have a hand hockey tournament in the basement. And Kush, I remember we invited you too, but you were busy that day. And the chaos that ensued in the basement of that house when we were playing hand hockey as grown men was ridiculous. It was like it was just people were getting elbowed and just.
I actually think I remember this. You inviting me, yeah. We were like young adults.
Like we shouldn't have been playing hand hockey. Like we should have gone and actually played hockey somewhere. Yeah. But like I love how like that bond. We're like, yo, that was actually a fun time. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Some broken bones later, but it's interesting that like hockey can be such a bonding experience. I guess that's what all sports do.
It's exactly right. It's sport, right? Sport, like when they say sports keeps people out of trouble, brings them together, it really does, right? Because like you're just there, you want to win. There's teamwork. There's like competition, right? There's a drive. There's a goal. There's also like dealing with rage and those things too, but in like a healthy way because there's a respect factor there as well, right? So like it has all these different dynamics, working together, whatever it is, and then so instead of you doing something else, who knows what you're doing, right? Like here you get to spend time with other people because like human interaction is pretty key in life. There's that aspect that's always covered because you're always playing with other people, right? So it's something that will bring you together and then create a connection, right? Like in whatever the sport is, and this is just no different. Like and then your bonds are going to be stronger because you accomplish things kind of together, right? Like I can speak to that like in my 20s and my teens.
I'm going to tie it to identity, right? Like I said, like the Surma boys, but now with me and Kush talk, we're like, the Thunder boys, because like it's just our identity of like even like Oilers fans, or if we're talking about kind of a general picture, it really gives us a way to fit in.
Yeah, I have my the boys from the ice hockey team Thunder. Then I have my ball hockey guys, HC guys, right? So like that's what we say, like HC boys, right, or something, right? Yeah. Like we know what we're talking about, but like that was our crew, that was our group. We did like those things together. We won championship together, right?
And it like, goes beyond like that, right?
Yeah, and then we hung out every game after the game together, right? At the dreaded BPs, thanks to Mr. Joel Sandhu, but
we got to get him on one of these episodes.
Better than
Nando's. He wants to.
I mean, sorry, better than Denny's. Sorry, the vibe came out right there.
No, because now I have a disdain for BPs. I go in there, I'm like
permanently scarred.
I guess we can go to BPs. When you've just gone there too many times, and you're just like, I need to not be here. Yeah. But anyways, like maybe we can touch on that in a bit as we kind of progress the timeline. But like that's a whole different experience for me too. Yeah. Anyways. Like, playing with friends and competitively as I became an adult.
So we've talked a lot about how we were drawn into hockey, what our first recollections of hockey were. What I want to talk about now kind of is with the hockey season coming up, with fans back in attendance in arenas all across the NHL. What is the first, let's start with there. What is the first hockey game that you saw in person, and what did you like and not like about it?
Well, for him and me, Kush and me is the same game. It was February 28, I believe, either 97 or 98. I can't remember. I think it was 1998.
I don't remember which year, but yeah.
I think it was 1998. I could be wrong. But yeah, we went to the San Jose Sharks versus Edmonton Oilers game. And yeah, it was a pretty crazy.
Back when home jerseys were white color.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah, because so we saw the San Jose Sharks.
San Jose, yeah.
San Jose Sharks. So San Jose Sharks, we saw them. I have a sore throat. I'm really struggling to talk here, guys. So we saw them sort of in their like teal, silver, and black jerseys, and they were pretty cool. And back then, it was all about like that shiny, metallic sort of materials on jerseys. Like the Predators had that too, and a few teams had that going. So it was kind of interesting. Now that I think back to it, it was kind of like a really thick and heavy jersey. Like it's not very comfortable. You're sweating in that, right? So just saying.
They used to be so heavy.
What I find interesting, so I can't remember like the very first like hockey game I went to. They're kind of all blend together. I know I used to go with my hockey teams as like a group. That's one I remember. The other I remember I went to an Edmonton Oilers versus Atlanta Thrashers game because I was a huge Atlanta Thrashers fan.
They had cool jerseys too, yeah.
That's exactly why I liked them, because they had cool jerseys. So I remember I wrote, I was probably maybe 10 or 11 at the time. So I wrote ATL in like dollar store paint on my face, all excited. It was all smudged in blue, so it didn't look at all like anything. And one thing I remember was I got there and I'm like, I can't see anything. My seats are so high up, like there's a little bunde, and I couldn't see anything at all. So the game, so it was a blowout. Obviously, Atlanta was not the best hockey team, and the Oilers were winning. So I remember at the end of the game, it was the end of the game. Little Mullock didn't know that. So I thought the Atlanta scored, and I got so excited in my section, and I like started cheering, and then I was like taunting the people behind me, and they're like, the game's over. I'm like, oh, never mind. I just sat back down.
Oh my God, they didn't do it.
We won. No, your misery ended. Is what happened.
That's a good way to put it. But that's kind of my first recollection of live hockey. The biggest thing for me was like, there's no announcer. How am I supposed to know what's happening? It's such a fast game in the first place. So like, I remember I went later on and I took binoculars as a kid because I'm like, I need to see what's going on. But that my first memory was like, I can't see anything. I have no idea what's happening.
Yo, I'm gonna jump in, and I remember now after my first game with Cushy as well. My sister was there too, and I remember our dad dropped us off, and I was supposed to be in charge of them. LOL. But I remember the same thing. I was like, there's no one now, like there's no play-by-play, because I used to listen on Ched, because sometimes it wasn't on TV, but it was always on Ched, right? And so then I saw this one dude, or I think it was one of my teachers at school. I was talking to them about it, and they're like, some people take like a radio with them and they can listen.
Yeah.
And then I remember also seeing, like, looking up in the stands, like we weren't far from the top either, right? Like we were up in that section, and just right against the old like concrete wall of the Northland Skyreach Center at that time, was this old dude sitting there with this like radio headset. The headset had a radio built in with an antenna. Sick. I actually got that same one. It's actually sitting in the same house where Cushy is right now. I'll show you later. So I went and picked one up somehow. They were selling them. You know who was selling? We were at Grey Nuns Hospital. A lot of my family used to work there. And I went there to see my Ummi was working there. So there was these dudes selling them for some lottery, some charity stuff. And I made her buy me one. So I remember the next Oilers game we went, I had it on. And like I was sitting there like some like robot. Like I felt like I was like, Wall-E or one of those like weird robots, and Chappie or something. And so I'm sitting there and I was like, yo, this is out of sync. Like it wasn't synchronized live because the radio is a little bit delayed, right?
Delayed, yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what the heck? So I took them off, and I just like ever since, but I always used to think about it. Like even here and there in the last few seasons, I was like, yo, man, I should listen on the radio and see what they're saying.
What I find so interesting is that we all had that same experience of sitting really high. But also, I remember I went to a game. This was a lot later. I took my dad. It was his first hockey game in so many years. It was Edmonton versus Florida. And the reason I went to that is because Tim Thomas, I was a big Bruins fan, and he was kind of on his last leg there in Florida. So we got seats right behind the goalie.
I like Tim Thomas.
That experience of like being ice level, totally different.
Totally.
and you like a puck hits the glass, and everybody in the section is just like, but there's glass there. It doesn't make any sense. But that experience versus the experience of sitting up in the nosebleeds, even, it's interesting that like it can be so drastically different, but at the same time, they're both enjoyable in their own way.
There they are, and the people that sit in those sections are very different too.
Oh yeah.
So you can call it a class system or something, whatever you want to call it. That's often what it's referred to as. Like people who don't have a lot of money are up top. People who have like they're loaded or whatever, they're down below, right?
Well, I used to buy tickets like the day of the game, like an hour before. Yeah. And then like, all right, let's go.
But you know,
I like
I like the middle, like right at the top of the lower bowl. Or right at the
bottom of the top bowl. Yeah, like that's my preference after like watching so many times. You know, it used to be like, I don't have enough money to spend on if I want to go to X amount of games, I can't be buying like great seats anyways, because let's be real, hockey is not necessarily the most affordable thing to go watch, right? Sporting event. So like especially in Edmonton when you don't have so many major league options kind of stuff, right? And then so like I remember like used to going to like the 300s, which is like the nosest of the nosebleeds, and then like going into like the 200s or whatever. And so like for me, I love sitting
300s.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I was chewing on my thing. Sorry.
That's literally what I just said. Anyway, so like the 200s, like I like sitting in the upper bowl personally, because like for me, the way my brain works, I've always like that's how I kind of analyze the game, right? Because I'm not just looking at whoever has the puck. I'm looking at like every little detail that's like in that zone, where the defenseman's positions are, right? If you're cycling deep inside somebody's zone, if you dump the puck, where's the other guys coming rather than just the forechecker?
Greatest centerman in Div 12 hockey coming out here.
Right, like so that's always been like something I look at during games, and that's just how I always view, right? Like I've sat close before, and it was
I didn't like it. It's too
it's blocked, right? At a certain point, like the boards are blocks, like when it comes to your side, so you're like, I don't know where the puck is, and I have to look up at the jumbotron to see like where the puck actually is, right? So like you lose that part of a little bit of that game, and like for me that bugged me always, because I was like, no, I want to see everything, right?
Yeah.
So I always enjoy sitting in like the upper bowl, like lowest as I can in the upper bowl, but in the upper bowl.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. So I guess follow-up question to this then is, do we prefer live sports, hockey or otherwise, or do we prefer watching it on television live or otherwise?
Yeah, so I feel like so this is just because I don't know, man. Like Oilers going to games they're not as magical as it used to be, because like our fan base has taken quite a hit. Like, and then like us being Oilers fans for so long during like such dark times.
Yeah,
it takes.
But then you watch McDavid. You watch McDavid in real life versus like on TV.
That's the thing, right? Like that's exactly what I'm gonna go with it too. Like it's like you watch on TV and it's just like it looks like something. You see all these like high level athletes.
You can follow along. You can see the replays. I enjoy that a lot more. Like I can process it. Whereas like if you're in person, it's a little bit more hectic.
And then like you can also be part of the game, right? In person by like cheering, those things, booing. Like we all know the infamous goalie chants, like Belfort, you know what I mean? Like those things, like throwing the other team off, right? Like so home ice advantage. So those things in the playoffs at least become alive, right? So like those kind of things like matter as well. And then like you said, like if you see special plays, like you really feel how fast like a McDavid is, because like you just like it's on hockey on TV, it just seems like you're kind of like stepping out of time a little bit, but like when you're there, you're like, oh my god, this guy literally takes 2 seconds to be in like his defensive zone into the offensive zone. It's nuts.
Just so you know, there's like this thing, like in a lot of technology, we'll talk about this in one episode. Like, for example, here's a random thing. Here's an iPad, right? There's something called refresh rate. So when you're watching on TVs, that refresh rate of your TV will affect how you perceive the speed of the game or the vibe of the game is happening.
Yeah.
And so when something's televised, it's also slightly delayed from live, right? So I remember in reference to what you're saying, I remember watching Dwayne Rollison on the ice and Chris Pronger on the ice that season they were there. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are actually really good. Like they're doing so much that the camera doesn't show on the television. Dwayne Rolson was calling like, oh, go over there. Like he was like so vocal and you can see Pronger. Like I remember one game he was like, okay, all right. And he's like dictating everything from the back and the camera's not on him because these guys are off the frame right now, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like you don't see that in on TV. Whereas like when you are somebody, if you want to be a student of the game or something, like if you play, that's why like even like cheaper options like going to Oil Kings games or like AHL games or whatever. I think it's important to like take somebody who's like learning how to play the game. Yeah. Because then you can see all those little intangible things as well.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on, and it just reminded me of an experience that I had, not in Edmonton, but when you see like a specific player or a specific event on TV versus when you see it live. So I remember, and I'll tag Pat in with this because he's also been in the same arena. I watched a game in the MTS Center in Winnipeg. Tiny arena, super like intimate. Everybody's like, it's like a super weird slope. And the game that I got to watch was Patrick Laine's hat trick, second career hat trick. 5-2 Dallas, like they spanked Dallas. That crowd, like the whole building was shaking, like it was ridiculous. So I feel like live sports in that way, like you wouldn't experience that in TV. Like you definitely like you see it in playoffs. It's very, very ruckus, but like in person, it's like a whole nother experience.
So I have a story about the MTS Center and watching.
I guess you both went there.
Heritage Classic.
So just for reference. We weren't at the MTS Center. We were in Investors Field because it was a different.
No. You guys also watched the game at the MTS Center.
No, he wasn't there then.
I wasn't there
yet. He came the day after. This is me and other two Munpreets. And so, anyways,
Unbox with Sings.
I'm Mr. Unbox with Sings fellows there. So I'm just gonna tell the story now because I'm already in it. Now, okay, this is our former Oiler Jujar Kara.
The Punjabi Oiler.
Good luck to him in Chicago.
In Chicago Black, yeah.
Yeah,
he's Blackhawk now.
Yeah, Mr. Blackhawk. But like, anyways, so me and the two Munpreets, we had seats literally right behind the coach's bench, for the AHL team game right before the Heritage Classics, where Oilers played over there in Winnipeg. And so we went down for that, the Heritage Classic, the Winter Classic game, whatever, right, all that stuff. But so we also took in the I think it was Thunder. They were Thunder.
Stockton Thunder.
I don't remember what it was. Thunder, no, it was Oklahoma something. It was Oklahoma, I think.
Yeah, OKC Thunder. That was our
OKC the Oil Barons.
Well, whatever they were our farm team.
Yeah,
whatever, right? So our
OKC Thunder's basketball, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Oh, the Oilers is AHL affiliate, right? At that time.
Oil Barons.
Yeah, so then we are watching the game, and the Jujar is playing on like top line since, like he's kind of just cracking the Oilers lineup at that time, or just trying to, right? And so he's a Punjabi guy. We are Punjabi people too. So there's a relatability for us, right? So what I do is like, I don't know.
Full circle here. We're going full circle with the episode.
Yeah, and so what happens here is that, like when they're on the ice, like drinking their water during like the timeout breaks, they're looking right at us, right? Because like I said, the coach's back is right to us, and we're in the first row. And so what happens is they take a break. Jujar's on the ice. He's looking towards the bench. He locks eyes dead with me, right? Okay, and then like I don't know why I did it. I just did it, and then I just started going like ding 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 ding, right? And Jujar, he cracks the biggest smile ever, immediately turns around and like he has to like skate away because like I got him. Like I got him in that moment, right? Like he wanted to burst out laughing, but this guy's literally in the middle of like a battling, like so intense in his like thing, trying to win the game, focus on the game, and then he just sees this random brown guy in the stats, locks eyes with him. He's just doing a little dance.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then so as soon as like that happened, like we all saw, right? All three of us were like looking, of course, and then the smile, and then I just start pointing, and my laugh. You guys know my laugh. I have a very deadly laugh. I went off, and then the rest of us were laughing too. But like I went off, and then like I know he heard me for sure. So, anyways, I just remember that moment.
But you touched on such a big part of live sports, because this reminds me of a time when we went to Calgary to watch wrestling.
I was gonna intertwine that too because you were just talking about the whole experience, right?
Yeah.
Of live sports. Like wrestling is like that all the time for us because you are literally a part of the show and you make or break the show versus like when you watch on TV, like you can hear a crowd, but you can't feel a crowd, man. Like it's totally different. We've had amazing times whenever wrestling shows come to Edmonton. We always turn up and we've been on TV. We've gone
Manchester.
on TV.
I'll talk about that.
Yeah, so it's just like sporting events going there versus watching on TV, totally different, totally worth it. Like I think everyone should experience it at some different things. It can be expensive, like it's definitely going to be an evening out that costs
but then again, like if I'm thinking wrestling, we've gone to like the big shows, but also like when we go to the little shows, it's still just as good. Like you mentioned, even hockey, like going to AHL games is just as good.
We go to non-televised shows for wrestling, right? They don't make TV; they're just for the people in the city.
Like the indies. Don't forget about Boris, man. You gotta.
I'll never forget. I'll never forget that. Yeah, even local shows he's talking about, like Albertan wrestling, right? Like nothing that's on any TV platform at all. Like we've done those too, like, and those were super fun as well. If you want to make it fun, so like a lot of those experiences kind of also like kind of fall on you, like they like if you go to Oilers game, they'll have hype up people for sure, but like if you want to cheer and like have a good time, like you can like really influence, like just create an energy.
Just take
you can create an energy that'll be really fun, and you can like make a lot of people like kind of join in with you as well. So
the number of stupid chants that we started at wrestling events, Calgary or here, like endless.
Yeah Even Oilers games, I've had some when I had the faith in the team, like and still was passionate enough about hockey.
And that is why we're not talking about the Oilers' current season in this episode. Anyways, Pat, you have a little bit more experience, not only locally, not only nationally, but internationally as well. I know Kush does as well, but for you being a fan of that specific team, being able to go to that iconic of a stadium, talk a little bit about that.
So you're referring to Manchester United, and so what happened is in 2016, Kush was with me, Manpreet, one of the Unboxed with things. We all went to Manchester. We went to India as well, but we went to Manchester on the way back, and it was the first season opener, home game as well. Ibrahimovic was his first game. He scored 2 goals, so memorable. But Old Trafford is the stadium. It's one of the, and Cushy's a Liverpool fan, and I was even down to go with him to Anfield if we were able to get tickets, which we weren't able to, just to feel that, right? But Old Trafford is the second biggest stadium in all of, I think, Europe. I could be mistaken, second to Wembley. Almost 80,000 fans can fit into that, and they're going to make it even bigger. And being there, we were just chatting with people at the book. We found other Albertans from Calgary. We found Americans it was Americans, not Albertans. We were making fun of Trump and, stuff like that. But oh my God, Theater of Dreams is an understatement because that's the nickname for Old Trafford. Watching that team, Manchester United, play, win, score, cheer, everything in that stadium. I spent £600 there just on like, it was, I was like, yo, I'm here. I'm going to do whatever. I bought like jerseys. I did everything. And it was nuts, man. And then there was also this hotel, which a lot of the old class of 92 Man United players owned, like Ryan Giggs and them, called Hotel Football, which is literally right across the way from the Old Trafford Stadium. So we went and had lunch there a few times. And man, it was epic. And Kush, I want your insight because you're not even a United fan, right? So I'm obviously into the team.
See, but I had two
phones.
But I feel if you're into the team, that experience for you is going to be like 150 times. Like
you know what
for Kush, but like you, like it's a dream.
Yeah.
Like
it was insane. It was unforgettable. And here's the thing: I remember trying to get tickets. I actually bought memberships for me, for Kush, for Manpreet. I bought us memberships for Man United. They were like whatever. So then I remember the day the season, the tickets opened for the season. And it's the UK time. So I'm up at like 5, 6 in the morning on the phone, on the computer, trying to get tickets. I barely got 3 in the same area. I got 2 together. And then I got 1 a little bit further off, not much farther. Like you can still see each other from there, right? And so I was like, you know what? I'll let you 2 sit together. I'll sit alone because I'm a huge United fan. I know you guys technically aren't. But yeah. So that experience was just insane. Like, I'll never forget it. I'm so happy I went to Old Trafford. Even today, like the day we're filming, it's the 29th of September. Watching Ronaldo score in extra time and win the Champions League game today, like that vibe, everything you see, everybody's going nuts, is how it was even in the first home game. And I'm gonna go grab Himmat Singh, and Kushi, you tell your opinion on how that was.
Yeah, like so. Well, we did a tour as well of the stadium like the day before, right? Like, so he went all out. Like, he got us memberships and stuff. Like he said, he got us tours. Like, like was very committed to get us in there because it's not cheap either, right? Like this isn't Canadian dollar, it's the pound, right? So, but it was like totally worth it, right? Like, even if I'm not a Man U fan at all. You know, obviously Liverpool, we have a rivalry. I'll shit talk them all the time. But like still to go in there, check it out, see the history and stuff.
Secretly, you love it.
Super cool. No. And then so it was easier for me because, you know, Ibrahimovic was on that team, and who doesn't love Ibrahimovic? And yeah, so it was his like debut. Amazing. But then like, yeah, like I've always wanted to go, right? Because it just seems so legendary. All the chants, everything that everyone's singing,
songs,
together, all the songs, cheering. Like, my God, it just seems like a ultimate like sporting
it's
event.
Like
right?
it's comparable. The feeling is comparable. I felt like I was in like one of the old Coliseum type stadiums in Rome when they used to have like people fighting with animals and to the death. like it was that kind of a vibe.
Yeah, it was unreal. It was pretty awesome. Like it's really hard to put into words sometimes, like those feelings, but like it's like yo, this is a once in a lifetime thing. You might never ever be here again. Like, you have to do it, right? And so like, and for me it was totally worth it. Like, it was just an unreal experience. Like, the energy was crazy. The fans lost it, you know, when excuse me, when Ibrahimovic scored his 2 goals, right? Like, everyone's losing it, everyone's singing. Like, it was awesome. Like, and then I can only imagine, like, if it was my team, I'd probably
it was a crazy season,
right?
But there's
still came back.
Ibrahimovic back to
Mourinho's first season. Sorry, go ahead, Mo.
No, I'm going to tie back to what we started talking about, is how sports. We talked about hockey bringing everybody together. Kushi, being a fan of the rival team, still felt like he was part of the community, still felt like he was part of that environment, despite being in hostile territory.
Even if you're an opposing team, right? They have a section for them.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, we'll put you all together. You guys can cheer as in unison as well, right? Like, it still creates a environment for, even if you don't like that team, you're going to cheer for the opposite team, right?
Yeah.
So I guess
that doesn't happen in hockey. That's why there's so many like fights, obviously.
Yeah.
But in football, they're like, hey, or soccer,
there's extra security marking the boundaries of those away supporters areas. It's like a little corner.
So tying it back to what we started talking about with hockey and sports and all of that fun stuff, the question that we started with was then live sports or on TV? What is your preference?
It's got to be live, man. I think be live just for the experience, but then TV, watching on TV is awesome too, because it's at your leisure. Doesn't cost you that much more, almost nothing. So
Pat,
I think it's the vibe with who you're with. So when you're at a stadium, like when I was at Old Trafford, Kush and Manpreet were with me. They were a little bit away, right? I was by myself sitting, and even I went to a Habs game in Montreal when they played the what's it called, the Flyers, when the Flyers had Pronger and they destroyed the Habs. But being in Montreal, I was sitting by myself. I went to the game by myself. Insanity. When you have that crowd around you and that vibe, nothing can replace that. But when you have your friends and you all have that some sort of same vibe, and you're sitting watching in your garage,
that's exactly
so the radio driving, it's about who you're with. And when you're in a stadium and everybody's into that game and nobody's being like bad fans, for lack of better terms, then you have that experience, because then you feel like you're part of the team.
So I'm going to answer opposite of you guys. I'm going to say I prefer watching sports on TV, but I'm going to tie it into Pat's point of
that's because you don't like wearing pants.
It's who you're with. It's what, like, the environment you're in with. If you're watching a game with your friends, and again, I'm tying it back to nostalgia. I remember every Saturday, my cousins would come over. We'd have a pizza party. We'd be sitting on the KC and just watching Hockey Night in Canada. And that for me was like, okay, this is cool. Even during the pandemic, me, Manpreet, a couple of the friends, we would watch hockey over Zoom. It's totally different experience. But Manpreet still has a screenshot of me sitting during the Oilers playoff runs, just absolutely just in the moment.
Yeah.
So I feel like the atmosphere can be created with the people that you're around if you're in person or.
Oh, just so you know, he has that framed actually. It's in his bedroom on the wall.
Yeah, no, I don't. I agree with you 100%, right? But yeah, like because like there's a lot of moments when you get to just, it's just a good reason to get together with friends too. Just because like the Zoom stuff, for example, I do that with wrestling with my buddies, right? Like you've done it, we've done it with WrestleManias, and then I do it like with Japanese wrestling. So like you definitely get to laugh at something together or enjoy something together, and that's pretty awesome as well. So I do like you bringing up that point of like the camaraderie, building like your relationships with your friends or whatever. So like that part's pretty important too. So that's why it's like, yeah, you do both, obviously, right? Yeah. But like I feel like that experience also translates into live, like when you go with people who are going to turn up too, because like we had a pretty incredible experience. We went to one of the wrestling shows and on Raw back in the day. We were so rowdy that they even like put us on TV. Because we were just making so much noise and cheering, right? And like we weren't even anywhere close. We were like, I think in the upper bowl, but we were just going nuts. But anyways, like yeah, it's just, sports is just such a lovely thing. You can enjoy it at home, you can enjoy it in person, you can play, right? It's just so many aspects of it that kind of positively affect you or contribute to your lifestyle.
Yeah, and I was gonna tie it into contributes to helping your mental health as well. Social interaction.
Mental health. I don't know about that.
As I said that,
it can also be detrimental to your mental health.
Yeah, but if you're with
your team is doing really bad.
Hashtag Oilers.
Yeah, for sure. So that is why we are not talking about
Eagles.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I feel like that's a good spot to end the episode. Kind of coming in talking about our experience with hockey, sports, and how it ties into our identity.
It's kind of funny though, because now that I'm sitting here with this guy, Himmat, I watch all my Man United games, and he's always sitting there watching with me. It makes me reflect on the beginning of our show today when we were talking about. Well, I was talking about my dad.
How do you experience? How do you get into it?
And I feel like it's kind of putting me in that mindset of like, what's it going to be like for this guy, right? So for those of you listening, my son has joined us.
Yeah, right. And then like even when I get older, or when he gets older, rather, like I can't wait to start wrestling him and stuff, or like being like, hey, let's go play or something, right?
He's
like
gonna knock you out, man. He already does it.
Yeah, we'll see.
But so I feel like that's a good place to also remind everybody, if you're listening to this on whatever streaming platform, make sure you head over to our YouTube page, Pardesi Beats. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel. Also message us on Instagram and Twitter, as Himmat Singh is saying. Pardesi_Beats. If you have any ideas for shows or topics, well, let us know.
Yeah. What do you say?
Any last words, Himmat?
Himmat. Dada.
It's nap time. That's what he's saying.
It's almost.
All right. Until next time, guys.
Later.